Part 13. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 121. Chapter 121, Along the Way. It's a pity that your master doesn't know your affection for him, and he doesn't even care about your life or death. Sulayun said while observing the woman's face. The woman's face became increasingly depressed, but Sulayun still said, "He must have given you that poison. He seems to have already determined that you will die this time." The woman straightened up suddenly and was about to pounce on Sulayun. Wei Ya had been paying attention to the woman's actions, and when he saw it, he quickly stopped her. Seeing the deathly silence in the woman's eyes, Sulayun slowly said, "I don't think you really want to die. You just think that if you can die for that person, your life will have meaning. But what you don't know is that there in the eyes of this kind of person, a person like you is dead when he dies, and he can find countless people like you. As for you, if your life is gone, it is gone. No one will remember you." The woman trembled and tears flowed from her eyes. There are no people who truly want to die, but they just lack a reason to live. I can cure your mute disease, and I can also help you intercede with the imperial concubine. There is only one request: tell me everything you know. The woman met Sulayun's eyes and blinked. Sulayun nodded and said, "I will do what I say." Someone brought a pen and paper over, and the woman wrote her name on the paper, Aju. This is her code name. She is an orphan and has no name. It was the master who saved her and gave her a name. Although she has been in contact with her master many times, she still doesn't know what he looks like or his name. She just calls him master. The other person's face is wearing a mask. Aju drew the appearance of the mask. Looking at the pattern on the paper, Sulayun's heart suddenly shrank. She has seen this mask before. That was clearly what Xiao Shenjiao was carrying in the dream. Could it be that Xiao Shenjiao did all these things? "Ms. Su, what's wrong with you?" Wei Ya's eyes showed worry. Sulayun stared at the mask for a long time, and his face turned pale. Sulayun came back to his senses and took a deep breath. "I'm fine. Let's go back." After leaving the secret cell, Sulayun adjusted his mood. "Miss Su, how did you know about Aju?" Wei Ya asked this not because he was suspicious of Sulayun, but because he was really curious. He has never seen such a powerful woman as Sulayun. Don't Master Wei also have thoughts in mind? Sulayun didn't think Wei Ya couldn't tell. When it came to interrogating prisoners, he was definitely better than him. "I have summarized my experience, but Miss Su, it seems this is your first time interrogating a prisoner, right?" That's why Wei Ya felt even more surprised. Perhaps women understand women better, Sulayun sighed. "I was actually just lucky. I randomly guessed a possibility, and I got it right. Speaking of which, when Aju pounced on me just now, I had to thank Mr. Wei for taking action." Sulayun smiled at Wei Ya. A gust of wind blew and the veil flew up, revealing her beautiful face. Wei Ya's dark face had two blushes rising, but it was covered up by his skin color. "Miss Yunur." There was a sound from behind, and Sulayun's face froze, and his hands and feet felt even colder at this moment. "Wei Ya has met His Highness the King of Jin." Wei Ya quickly knelt down on one knee to salute Xiao Shenjiao. Xiao Shenjiao nodded coldly. "Mr. Wei Ya, you're welcome." He looked at Sulayun, who had his back turned to him, with a hint of confusion and complexity in his eyes. She was smiling happily at Wei Ya earlier, but why did she feel something wrong when she saw her whole person? The daughter of the people pays her respects to His Highness the King of Jin. Sulayun pursed his lips, forced down his emotions, and saluted Xiao Shenjiao. Wei Ya thought about what Xiao Shenjiao had called Sulayun just now and blinked. Why did he feel that the atmosphere between His Royal Highness Prince Jin and Miss Su was a bit strange? The three people stood there and fell silent. Xiao Shenjiao felt a little helpless when he saw Sulayun's unnatural expression. I am going to visit my 13th brother, why don't we go together? How could Sulayun and Wei Ya dare to refuse the words of King Jin? The three of them were walking on the way back to Yufa Palace, and attracted the attention of many people. Fortunately, the Jade Buddha Hall is not far away and we will arrive soon. Sulayun asked Wei Ya to report the situation to the imperial concubine, while he went to the place where he lived to pack his things. What happened next had nothing to do with her. Looking at Sulayun's leaving figure, Xiao Shenjiao narrowed his eyes and entered the main hall. Ms. Su, you are back. When Linglong saw Sulayun, she immediately put down her work and came forward. Sulayun responded to Linglong with a smile. She rarely gets along with someone as enthusiastic as Linglong. Sometimes she feels a little unnatural, but sometimes she feels good about it. Miss Su, are you leaving so soon? Linglong asked with some reluctance as she helped Sulayun pack her things. She didn't know what happened, but she was thinking that Miss Su didn't really stay to teach people embroidery. After all, I am not a member of the palace, and it is against the rules to stay in the palace. Sulayun didn't explain much. He just took out the brocade bag from his sleeve and handed it to Linglong. Thank you for taking care of me these past 2 days. This is what a slave should do. Linglong saw the brocade bag handed over by Sulayun and shook her head hurriedly. How could she collect the lady's things? Sulayun put it on the table, it's just some small things. If you don't want them, I won't take them away. She had only stayed in the palace for 2 days, and naturally she didn't have much, just a few pieces of clothing that needed to be taken away. Before leaving, I naturally had to say goodbye to concubine Qin. Sulayun entered the main hall and saw that Xiao Shenjiao, who said he was going to visit the 13th prince, was still in the hall and was talking to concubine Qin. Looking at the postures of the two people, Sulayun was a little confused. Concubine Qin and Xiao Shenjiao seemed to be very familiar with each other. Wei Ya has disappeared. Miss Su, concubine Qin saw Sulayun, and the smile on her face became even stronger. I really want to trouble you about the 13th prince. Li Yulai, bring up the things. Lu Li brought a tray with a lot of jewelry on it. I don't have anything to give to Miss Su, so these are just a few gifts of thanks. Since this matter was carried out secretly, it was impossible for concubine Qin to reward Sulayun directly, as this would cause people to notice clues. This is what a daughter of the people should do, these jewelry. Sulayun was about to refuse when he heard Xiao Shenjiao cough lightly. I think Miss Su is going back to Su Mansion later, and I also want to find Su Ye, so I'll send Miss Su along. Xiao Shenjiao looked at Lu Feng beside him. Lu Feng, take these things to the car first. Yes. Li Yufeng took the jewelry from Li Yulai's hand and turned around and left the Yufu hall. The movements were clean and neat, leaving no chance for Sulayun to speak. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 122. Chapter 122 Leading the Expedition. Concubine Qin glanced at the two of them, thoughtfully. Then he said, that's fine, let King Jin give Miss Su a ride. This will save me some trouble. If you let the Empress worry about it, then it will be troublesome for King Jin. In front of concubine Qin, Sulayun still suppressed the words of rejection. It also saved face for Xiao Shenjiao. After Xiao Shenjiao visited the 13th prince, the two of them left the Yufa palace. Getting on the carriage, Sulayun leaned towards the corner, trying to stay as far away from Xiao Shenjiao as possible. Xiao Shenjiao lowered his eyes and glanced at the distance between the two, and said, why is there still one person in this carriage? Sulayun looked at the carriage in confusion. He could see clearly that there were only two of them. Otherwise, why would Miss Su have to vacate such a large space? She would almost fall out of the carriage. Understanding that Xiao Shenjiao was teasing her, Sulayun coughed lightly and moved a little closer. Does Miss Su have any dissatisfaction with me? Your Highness is too worried. Sulayun lowered his head and answered. Xiao Shenjiao stared at the top of Sulayun's hair and couldn't help but said, when we first met, Miss Su was bolder than she is now. His Highness also said that this was the first time we met. At that time, the daughter-in-law didn't know His Highness's identity, so she was very offended. Sulayun explained. The more distant her attitude became, the more confused Xiao Shenjiao became. He had to admit that the jade pendant incident was indeed something he did deliberately, showing that he was very familiar with her in front of the Su family. It was just that they met one after another at that time, which made him a little suspicious. So he set out to test. The result was also obvious. Everything between Sulayun and him was really just a coincidence and there was no design at all. Hence, his attitude towards Sulayun gradually changed later. I didn't do anything that caused misunderstanding. A few days ago, he rescued Sulayun, and Sulayun's attitude towards him became better at that time. Why did he become nervous again when they met today? Your Majesty, we have arrived at the Su mansion. When Xiao Shenjiao came to his senses, Sulayun had already noticed that the carriage had stopped. He opened the curtain and got out of the carriage. By the time Xiao Shenjiao got out of the car, Sulayun had already entered the Su mansion. Your Majesty, these things. Lai Yufeng asked, pointing to the jewelry given by concubine Qin in the carriage. Miss Su entered so fast that he didn't even react. Send it over. Xiao Shenjiao glanced at it and gave orders. Then he walked into Su mansion. Sulayun did not return to Keahuaziazu, but went to Huiro Pavilion first. Hearing that Sulayun was back, Sun Gro hurriedly came out to welcome him. Mom, I'm back. Sun Gro pulled Sulayun over, looked up and down, and touched Sulayun's cheek. You have lost weight in the past 2 days. In the evening, I will make you a bowl of soup to replenish your body. Mom, you said it's only been 2 days, how can you lose weight? Sulayun pulled Sun Gro into the house. Funny, what's more, my daughter still feels fat. Nonsense, you are not fat. Seeing Sulayun well, Sun Gro's heart was completely relieved. How have you been these past 2 days? Looking at Sulayun's expression, Sun Gro asked. Sulayun thought for a while and replied, it's good. The imperial concubine did not treat her daughter harshly and even rewarded her with something. Yunur, tell me the truth. What did you do when you stayed in the palace? Mom heard that something happened to the 13th prince. The news of the 13th prince's accident did not spread. It was only after Sun Gro asked Mrs. Lin that she learned the news. As soon as she thought about it, she felt something was wrong. When something happened to the 13th prince, how could concubine Qin still have the energy to greet Sulayun? Thinking again about Sulayun's medical skills, Sun Gro had a guess. She felt that her daughter's stay in the palace must have something to do with the 13th prince's affairs. Seeing that nothing could be hidden from Sun Gro, Sulayun briefly explained the matter, but concealed the things related to the previous life. I didn't expect such a big thing to happen that day. Sun Gro sighed. The prince has not yet been established, and which prince and concubine does not want to compete with him? Such things are not uncommon throughout the ages. Don't take it to heart what my mother said before. These inexplicable words made Sulayun stunned. Mom, what are you talking about? It's about you and Prince Jin. The danger of winning the crime was long for the accompaniment of King Jin. I was afraid that the relationship would not be opened. Sun Gro didn't want his daughter to involve again. Earlier, she was only thinking about finding a good husband for Yunur, but she forgot about the danger behind the identity of King Jin. Sulayun was both funny and helpless. Mom, Prince Jin and I really have nothing to do with each other. What about the jade pendant? Sun Gro stared at Sulayun, trying to figure out something. Mom, my daughter will take care of the jade pendant matter. Sulayun planned to return the jade pendant to King Jin. He helped him several times and it was considered even. After all, Holding this jade pendant is getting even hotter now. Since Sulayun didn't want to say anything, Sun Gro didn't ask again. Until evening, Sulayun stayed in Huayro Pavilion to have dinner. Just after taking a few sips of soup, Grandma Li walked in. "Madam, Miss, here is a message from the palace." Sun Gro and Sulayun looked at each other. When we rushed to the main hall, everyone from the Su family had arrived. The person who came was an acquaintance, Unicorn. Unicorn glanced at several people and asked, "Is Mr. Suye here?" "All father-in-law." Suye stood up. "The emperor has decreed that the young master of the Su family, Suye, be appointed as the deputy commander of the capital, to assist the commander of the capital, His Royal Highness the King of Jin. 2 days later, he will go to the northwest to solve the vagrant riots. I hereby express my gratitude. I accept the decree and thank you, Your Majesty." Unicorn folded the imperial edict and put it in Suye's hands. Su Changqing and the old lady looked at each other in surprise. The homeless people in the northwest have been causing trouble for many years. Why did the emperor suddenly think of dealing with it? Moreover, let Suye go with King Jin. Su Changqing took a step forward and said, "Unicorn, it's just the new year, why is it so sudden?" "It's not sudden." Unicorn smiled, "the emperor has mentioned this before, and Master Suye should also know about it," said. Su Changqing was stunned. This look was seen by Wang Gonggong, and a hint of deep meaning flashed in his eyes. "Nothing happens, let's go back first." "Mommy, send Unicorn out." Sun Gro glanced at Grandma Li, who nodded, stepped forward and left with Unicorn. In the main hall, the atmosphere was a bit stiff. "Do you know about this?" Su Changqing frowned and asked after seeing Sun Gro's calm expression. Sun Gro said calmly, "Yeah, told me before." "Why don't you tell me?" "Even during the Chinese New Year, Mr. Ho is too busy and has little free time. How can I talk to Mr. Ho?" Sun Gro smiled, full of ridicule. This smile made Su Changqing shiver. As if there is something in the words. Su Changqing's brows furrowed even more. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 123. Chapter 123 Prayer. "Madam, I can't ignore the matters in the Yamen," Su Changqing said while observing Sun Gro's expression. Knowing that what he had just said might have made Su Changqing wary, Sun Gro's expression did not change. "Master Ho, have you counted how many days it has been since you came to Huayro Pavilion?" As soon as these words came out, Su Changqing breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out to be like this. "Madam, it's my fault. I will definitely make it up to you when I finish my busy work." "Master Ho, please don't talk about it with your mouth." Sun Gro has done her best to look like a resentful woman. Even Sulayun couldn't find any flaws in her performance. As for the homeless people in the northwest. After appeasing Sun Gro, Su Changqing asked again. Suye said, "Prince Jin told his son about this before. The homeless people in the northwest have been causing trouble for many years, and the emperor has long been unable to bear it. This time, the situation in the northwest is even worse, so the emperor gave such an order." "Why is it you, Yair? You just came back from the border not long ago, why don't you let others go?" Su Changqing seems to be worried about Suye, but in fact he is concerned about the selection issue. He does not want to see Suye being reused. In the past, Suye would have thought that Su Changqing was worried about him, but since he learned about his biological father's face, he thought about it carefully and saw the clues. Suye pursed his lips tightly. "The imperial edict has been issued, and my son has to go." This. Why didn't Su Changqing know this truth? Could it be that he wanted Suye to resist the decree? The Su family is the one that is involved. You should have told me about such a big thing first. Yes, for such a big matter, even if you don't tell the Marquis, you can tell it to me, an old woman, right? The old lady spoke. She always felt a little weird. If it were such a big matter, Sun Gro would definitely discuss it with her. Why don't you say a word now and just wait for the imperial edict? My mother-in-law was busy with Wanner's affairs in those days. I didn't want my mother-in-law to worry about this matter, so I didn't say anything. Sun Gro looked like she was thinking about the old lady, and for a moment it was hard to find anything wrong with her. The matter has come to this, so it would be no different to ask more. In that case, go back and clean up. The old lady shook her head helplessly and glanced at Su Changqing. If Mr. Ho is free, come to my place. Yes, mother. Suye and Suleun accompanied Sun Gro back to Huiro Pavilion. I didn't expect to be in such a hurry. Fortunately, my mother had already made arrangements to go to Tianbao Temple tomorrow to pray for Ye. Sun Gro patted the back of Suye's hand and had to leave soon after taking her home. Naturally, she was reluctant to part with him. What's more, the place Suye is going to is the Northwest. The homeless people in the Northwest have been harassing people for many years, and the two sides have fought countless times. When it comes to force, the Northwest wanderers who have lived on horseback for many years are more powerful. However, they are unable to defeat the Shen due to their equipment and strategies. Therefore, after many years of fighting, both sides have their own wins and losses. Suye didn't believe in ghosts and gods, but he didn't refuse Sun Gro's arrangement. It can make the mother feel at ease. As a son, of course he has to do it. Early the next morning. I thought it was just the mother and son, but as soon as Suleun left the house, he saw the old lady's carriage parked not far away. Yunur. Sun Gro called out while sitting on the carriage. Suleun got on the carriage and asked doubtfully, Mom, will the old lady go too? Yes, Sun Gro nodded. I didn't hide this matter. The old lady said she would come when she found out about it, and Suwainer is also here. Suleun responded, since the old lady was coming, they couldn't stop her. Tianbao Temple is located on the outskirts of Beijing. What's interesting is that on the other side opposite to Tianbao Temple is Ajiao Temple. The carriage stopped at the gate of the temple. Wu, the abbot of Tianbao Temple, was waiting at the door. Amitabha, two donors, long time no see. Wu greeted the old lady and Sun Gro. Good abbot. Tianbao Temple is a national temple, and some ancestor worship services will also be held. Therefore, many ladies and ladies from aristocratic families in the capital will come here to pray for blessings and worship. Yunur, come and see Master Wu quickly. Sun Gro said to Suleun. Suleun took a step forward, clasped his hands and said, Leun has met Master Wu. The donor is polite. Wu smiled slightly, his eyes fell on Suleun's face, his eyes flashed. A group of people entered the temple. Under Wu's instructions, Sun Gro took Suleun and Suye to worship the Buddha together and pray for peace. Mom, I'm coming too. The old lady went somewhere unknown. Suwainer took the incense and came forward, also wanting to pray for Suye. Sun Gro did not stop her and allowed Suwainer to do these things. You are determined. After Suwainer put on the incense, she said this lightly. Suwainer smiled and said nothing. Since when Yao and the others entered the Su mansion, Suwainer has been much quieter than before. Suleun saw this and became more and more suspicious that Suwainer really knew the identities of Wen Yao and the others. What's more, she hasn't forgotten the last time she saw Suwainer having a private meeting with Prince Yu. In order to become King Yu, Suwainer will definitely blame her marriage to Li Rui. Sister Waner. Cao has arrived. Suleun just thought about it in his mind, turned around and heard Li Rui's voice. Seeing Suwaner, Li Rui hurriedly walked up with a happy face. Sister Wan'er, it's a coincidence that we met at Tianbao Temple. Su Wan'er's expression was not very good when she saw Li Rui, but for a moment, no one noticed. Mr. Li, what a coincidence. Mr. Li. Li Rui was startled when he heard this title. He and Su Wan'er had known each other since childhood. Except for the unfamiliarity when they first met, they had never been like this since. Sister Wan'er, what's wrong with you? Li Rui said, looking up at Sulayun on one side, thinking of something. Did someone say something? When he said this, his eyes were still fixed on Sulayun. I am afraid that others will not know that he is talking about Sulayun. Sulayun felt ridiculous to be affected for no reason. Is there something wrong with Li Rui's brain? Does everyone look like they want to harm others? Sulayun quickly took a few steps away, fearing that even she would be infected if she stood with such a brainless person again. Master Li, don't talk nonsense. We still have to be more respectful in front of the Buddha. Su Wan'er also thought Li Rui was stupid and quickly explained. Li Rui said, what you said makes sense, but I said the wrong thing. As he spoke, he glanced at Sulayun again. He was standing very far away and his eyes were elsewhere. Completely ignored what he meant. Li Rui felt a strange emotion in his heart. He had indeed misunderstood Sulayun just now. It was reasonable for the other party to be angry and ignore him. Should he come forward and apologize? Thinking like this, Li Rui couldn't help but take a few steps forward. I saw Sulayun pulling Suye over. Brother, why don't we go out for a walk? Okay. Looking at Sulayun and Suye's leaving figures, Li Rui stopped and froze for a moment. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 124. Chapter 124 Mr. Li. The brother and sister left the main hall of Tianbao Temple and walked all the way to the path. Yun'er, your marriage to Li Rui. Brother, don't talk nonsense. Sulayun raised his hand to interrupt Suye. Everyone in the capital knows that the person Li Rui is engaged to is Su Wan'er. But this marriage can't be made easier for others, right? Suye didn't really want to bring Sulayun and Li Rui together. In his opinion, Li Rui was not good enough for his sister. It's just that he always feels uncomfortable. Sulayun was supposed to be the only legitimate daughter of the Su family, but her grandmother was biased and kept Su Wan'er, making Yun'er the second young lady. In the end, the marriage that belonged to Yun'er was made easier for Su Wan'er. Brother, I won't always be the second young lady of the Su family. Sulayun met Suye's gaze and understood each word. As for the meaning of the words, the brother and sister knew it very well. I was too worried. Suye reached out and rubbed Sulayun's head, his eyes full of pity. I forgot that you are smarter than my brother. Brother, you are martial and I am literary, isn't this just right? Sulayun chuckled and bumped into Suye. The brother and sister looked at each other and laughed. Somewhere in Tianbao Temple. Su Wan'er suddenly stopped and turned to look at Li Rui impatiently. What are you doing with me? Sister Wan'er, aren't we usually like this? Li Rui looked at Su Wan'er's expression in confusion. After not seeing her for a few days, why did Su Wan'er seem to have changed her appearance? Perception of Li Rui's suspicion, Su Wan'er reluctantly pursed her lips and smiled, but I want to be alone now. I won't disturb you, Sister Wan'er. I told you, don't call me that in the temple. Looking at Li Rui, who couldn't understand human words, Su Wan'er's anger intensified. The marriage between the Su and Li families was originally supposed to be between Sulayun and Li Rui. What does it have to do with her? Why should she have to bear this now? What is it about Li Rui that is worthy of her? Prince Yu is her true destiny. Su Wan'er's eyes flashed. In order to marry Prince Yu, it was time for her to push Li Rui out. Sister Wan'er. Li Rui looked at Su Wan'er's unpredictable expression and shouted worriedly. Brother Rui, Su Weiner's expression changed and she returned to her usual gentleness. I'm sorry, it was Weiner who was in a bad mood just now, so she treated you like that. Sister Weiner, just be okay. As soon as Li Rui heard this, his doubts disappeared instantly, and he wanted to take Su Weiner into his arms to comfort her. But Su Weiner didn't give him this chance and avoided his extended hand. Actually, Su Weiner said, her eyes slightly red. She raised her eyes and glanced at Li Rui resentfully. Brother Rui, you were right when you were in the main hall just now. What? Li Rui was stunned for a moment. What did he just say in the main hall? But soon, Li Rui remembered. His face also darkened. What did Sulayun do to you? Brother Rui, don't blame Sister Yuner. Su Weiner picked up the handkerchief and pretended to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. It's all Weiner's fault, Weiner owes her. Li Rui grabbed Su Weiner's wrist and said, Sister Weiner, don't talk nonsense. What's your fault? Did Sulayun threaten you and tell you not to get too close to me? As he spoke, a hint of sarcasm flashed in his eyes. He knew that Sulayun just wanted to attract his attention. Li Rui is so smart, how could Su Weiner not make good use of it? Actually, Sister Yuner is also very pitiful. She was raised in Jingzhou and never lived a good life for a few days. I shouldn't compete with her. Su Weiner's voice was choked with sobs. What is snatching or not? Everyone knows that the two of us are engaged. Why should Sulayun ask you to give up your things as soon as he comes back? I'll go and make it clear to Sulayun. Brother Rui. Su Weiner grabbed Li Rui who was about to leave, looking anxious. Don't do that. Sister Weiner, you are just too soft-hearted. Brother Rui, Weiner just doesn't want to make her mother angry. Looking at Su Weiner's somewhat concealed expression, Li Rui looked a little confused. He hesitated and asked, why is Auntie angry? Sister Yuner has been wronged for so many years, so my mother naturally wants to give all the good things to Sister Yuner. You mean, this is what Auntie meant? When it comes to the ability of brainstorming, Li Rui is truly second to none. Su Weiner just said these words, and he made up for it in his own mind. How could Aunt do this? Is she trying to break us up? Brother Rui, I'm sorry. Su Weiner used a handkerchief to cover the joy in her eyes. It seemed that she didn't need to waste any more words. Li Rui tightened his hand. How could Auntie do this? Sister Weiner, don't worry, I won't let Auntie break us up. Brother Rui, I know what you are thinking, but, Su Weiner leaned into Li Rui's ear and whispered softly, actually, what mother means is that she hopes that Sister Yuner can also marry into the Li family. Ah! Li Rui was stunned and looked at Su Weiner in a daze, as if he had just heard wrongly. Su Weiner was about to say more when she heard playful sounds coming from the side. She quickly let go of Li Rui's hand, and when the ladies came over, she was already several meters away from Li Rui. Isn't this Miss Su? The leading woman recognized Su Weiner, looked at Li Rui again, and suddenly covered her mouth and smiled. Is Miss Su meeting her lover in the temple? Ha 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 ha. A few people laughed, not hiding their sarcasm. Su Weiner twisted the veil and put on a decent smile on her face. Zhang Yu, I heard that marriage in Tianbao Temple is very accurate. If you have time, go and pay homage to her and get married as soon as possible. You. Zhang Yu's expression changed and he looked at Su Weiner with irritation. What she hates most is others making trouble about her marriage. She is already 20 this year, and most of her peers have children. Even if things go wrong, they are already engaged. She was the only one. Not only did she not have a marriage contract, she didn't even have anyone come to ask for her hand in marriage. I don't know what the reason is. Su Weiner, I'm not as shameless as you, looking like you hate getting married. Miss Zhang Yu, don't go too far. Li Rui frowned and spoke for Su Weiner. Zhang Yu glanced at him. She had nothing to do with Suwanur, and she always looked down on Li Rui. If she didn't hate getting married, why would she be flirting with you in the temple? Don't think that you two have the reputation of being an unmarried couple. You can do such dirty and obscene things in the temple even though you are alone. What are you talking about? Li Rui clenched his fists, but after all, he still had some qualities as a scholar and would not attack a woman. Master Li, forget it, don't argue with people like this, let's go. Suwanur opened her mouth to persuade. When Zhang Yu heard what she said, he didn't even care to be angry. Instead, he looked at the two people leaving with a surprised look on his face. What is Suwanur doing? Isn't she usually called Rui Ge Rui Ge? Why did you become Mr. Li today? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 125. Chapter 125 Change of Mouth. Sulayun and Suye returned to the main hall. Sun Gro had already taken the amulet from the abbot and distributed it to the two of them. Yeah, you must always wear your amulet and don't take it off. Mom, I know. Suye put the amulet away. The old lady came in from outside the palace and looked around. Where is Wanur? Miss. Yuyeo hesitated and saw Suwanur entering the main hall. Grandmother. Suwanur walked to the old lady with a calm expression. Li Rui followed her into the main hall. Looking at the postures of the two people, the old lady's eyes flickered. It's not too early, let's go back. The old lady spoke, but no one said anything. Sulayun just looked at the sky outside. They had not even arrived at Tianbao Temple for half a day, and they had no use for lunch. So they were leaving now? She suppressed her doubts and the group left Tianbao Temple. Li Rui also followed suit. Mr. Li, there is no need to send it away. The old lady met Li Rui's eyes and nodded lightly. Even Suye noticed something was wrong about this situation. When I saw Li Rui in the past, the old lady had never been so cold. Then I won't give it away. Li Rui also had a look of confusion on his face, but he didn't feel like saying anything. He held up his hands and watched as several people got on the carriage. Sitting in a carriage. Sun Gro frowned and said, "What's wrong with mother-in-law? Perhaps I encountered some unhappy things." Sulayun said it, but he was thinking a lot in his heart. The old lady always regarded Li Rui as her grandson-in-law and wished that Suwanur and Li Rui would get married soon, but later she changed her attitude. Even though she did kneel in front of the door and beg for 3 days, when the old lady relented, she was obviously happy when she thought about it now. It seemed like the person who wanted to marry Li Rui was Sulayun. The group returned to Su Mansion. The old lady immediately called Suwanur into the house. "Grandma, what do you want from Wanur?" When Suwanur asked, she subconsciously looked at the old lady's expression. When she noticed the old lady's slightly changed expression, her heart also tightened. The old lady looked at Suwanur and said, "Wanur, come to Grandma." "Grandma." Suwanur sat on a small chair aside and leaned against the old lady. "Wanur, if Grandma doesn't let you marry Li Rui, will you be angry with Grandma?" "Grandma, what are you talking about?" Suwanur had a look of panic on her face, but her heart was beating fast. Can she finally arrange the marriage? The old lady sighed softly. "I know that you and Li Rui have been together for many years and have a deep relationship, but after Grandma thought about it carefully, you two are still not suitable for each other. Even the old lady herself doesn't believe this." Suwanur couldn't believe it. The old lady had said more than once that the two of them were a good match. Why did she change her tune today? But her face remained calm, and she didn't reveal any joy at all. "Grandma, what on earth is going on today?" The old lady seemed to want to explain, but she only started to explain, and then stopped. Suwanur's face twitched, and she felt a little displeased. I usually say everything to her, but now I can't say anything. Wanner, it's better that you don't know about this. You just need to understand that everything your grandmother did is for your own good. Grandma, Wanner knows, but what should we do about the marriage? The old lady stared at the distance not far away for a long time and said, you are not the only child in the Su family. Su Wanner's eyebrows were filled with joy. God was going to help her. But Sister Yuner just came back and she had a dispute with Brother Rui. Will she be willing? Emotional matters can be cultivated, and Yoana should be satisfied with being able to marry Li Rui. When the old lady said this, she seemed to regard Suleun as something to be traded. Hence no intention of asking. I will make it clear to Brother Rui. Su Wanner felt that she could no longer suppress her emotions, so she quickly stood up and said, Grandma, there's nothing wrong. Wanner is going back first. The old lady sat in her seat and looked at Su Wanner's leaving figure. A moment later, Nanny Zhao entered the room. Old madam, do you want to discuss this matter with Mr. Marquis first? He is now obsessed with Wen Yao, and he is afraid that he is too lazy to even listen to this kind of thing. When it comes to her son who is addicted to the fragrance of women, the old lady looks like she hates iron. If he hadn't married Sun Gro, her son wouldn't be able to stay in the capital now. Old madam, why did the master suddenly change his words? Mama Zhao asked with a confused look on her face. In the early years, the old lady took Miss Wanner to see the master. At that time, the master clearly meant that Miss Wanner and Mr. Li Rui were a perfect match. Why do you now say that if the two of them get together, they can only become a bitter couple? You ask me, who should I ask? The old lady sighed, but she did not dare not listen to the master's words. She couldn't watch Wanner suffer either. Mama Zhao couldn't help but sigh. The old lady really did her best for Miss Wanner. If she could still understand it before, it was the grandmother's love for her granddaughter. But since Miss Wanner's identity was exposed, she couldn't understand the old lady. Why do you think so much about Miss Wanner? Even if we have been in love for many years, we still won't be so dedicated. Zhao Yan didn't understand and didn't think about it anymore. The master of the master, she was not a slave. In order to see Su Ye off, Suleun entered the small kitchen as soon as he returned to Kea Huaziazu. Miss, what are you looking for? Let the slave come. Lian Xian watched Suleun walking around, looking for something, and hurried over. Suleun took stock of the things he needed and wrote them down on paper one by one. Lian Xian, go and buy all the things here for me. Go back quickly. Lian Xian held a piece of paper with a lot of ingredients written on it. She had an answer in her mind. Just now, the lady was not looking for something, but looking to see what was missing. Miss, do you want to cook? Now that you know it, why not hurry up and go? Slave, go right away. Lian Xian held the paper and ran out quickly. While Lian Xian went shopping, Suleun and Kualai were busy in the kitchen, washing and processing the existing ingredients. When Lian Xian comes back, the time is just right. The most time-consuming thing was the medicinal black-bone chicken soup. Suleun processed this bowl of soup first, and after the clay pot was placed on the stove, he went to work on other dishes. Time passed little by little, and the aroma of black-bone chicken soup was already wafting in the small kitchen. Suleun held the spatula with great skill. Under the surprised gazes of Kualayu and Liangzin, plate after plate of delicious, and tasty dishes were brought out. I didn't expect that the lady is not only good at medicine, but also has such superb cooking skills. You must know that even the cooks who have worked in Su Mansion for more than 10 years are not as good as Suleun. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 126. Chapter 126 Tastes great. Mammy John came in after smelling the fragrance, and caught a glimpse of the green willow and lotus heart standing by the side. One person stepped forward and pushed with his finger. "Don't you two see that the lady is busy? Don't you know how to go up and help me?" Seeing that Sulayun was about to get something, Granny Jong said with quick eyesight and quick hands, "Miss, I can help you." "Mommy, don't blame them. I asked them not to help, and Grandma is resting." Sulayun added the seasoning and put the lid on the pot. She placed the prepared side dishes into the bowl one by one, and then poured the vegetables that had been simmered for a while into the bowl. Looking at Sulayun's smooth arrangement of the dishes, Grandma Jong felt a little confused. If it comes to cooking, she may have learned it when she was in Jingzhou, but how did she learn such exquisite arrangement? "Mommy, lotus heart, green willow, give me a taste." Sulayun took out a small bowl and each took some out. Quiliu had already smelled the aroma and couldn't help it. She stepped forward and took a bite with her chopsticks. Her eyes suddenly lit up and she mumbled, "Miss, it's delicious." Lian Xian ate gracefully, but chewed a little faster. When the food was finished, he said, "Miss, this fish meat doesn't have any fishy smell and melts in your mouth. How did you do it?" There are different ways to remove the fishy smell from different ingredients for seafood such as fish, whether it is cleaning or removing the internal organs. Use warm water several times to remove the fishy smell to a great extent. Sulayun took a bite to make sure it was cooked properly, and then answered Lian Xian's question. "So that's how it is. Okay, hurry up and take the dishes to the house. Quiliu, walk quickly and ask your mother and brother to come over." "Yes, miss." When Lian Xian and Kuilu left the kitchen, Sulayun looked at Nanny Zhang, who was standing thoughtfully on one side. "Nanny, what's wrong?" "Miss, you are the legitimate daughter of the Marquis, so it's better to stay away from places like the kitchen." Mother Zhang's worries are not unreasonable. Although ladies from aristocratic families in the capital will also go into the kitchen to make some snacks, most of them are done by maids and the ladies only direct them. Sulayun has been criticized since his return from Jingzhou. If more rumors spread, his reputation will be even worse. "Mommy, I know your worries, I will pay attention to it in the future." Sulayun smiled and walked out of the kitchen with Aunt Zhang. Sun Jiaro and Suye arrived together. Before entering the room, Suye seemed to smell something and couldn't wait to ask, "What delicious food did Grandma Zhang cook?" Mother Zhang glanced at Sulayun, covered her mouth and smiled, "Master, I didn't do anything today." "Then who made it? It's so fragrant, you can smell it from so far away." Suye looked around in confusion. In Kaihwaziazu, there could be someone who was better at cooking than Aunt Zhang. It's not that Grandma Zhang's cooking skills are great, but other little girls are probably not that good. Let the lady answer this question for you. Mama Zhang's mysterious appearance made Suye more and more curious. Sun Jiaro looked at Aunt Zhang on the left and Sulayun on the right, hiding the smile in her eyes. Several people entered the room, and the aroma became stronger and stronger. The table is already filled with dishes, all of which are piping hot. "Mom, brother, sit down and eat." Sulayun brought Sun Jiaro to his seat, and Suye sat down next to Sun Jiaro. "Yunur, is there a cooking hiding in your courtyard?" Suye glanced at the dishes on the table and was even more certain that they could not be made by the chefs of the Su family. Not to mention the presentation, the smell alone could not be made by the cooks of the Su family. "Yunur, did you do all this?" Even though Sun Jiaro was prepared, she didn't expect Sulayun's cooking skills to be so good. Of course, if compared with a real chef or an imperial chef, it is still far behind, but this level is already very good. "Did Yunur do it?" Suye was stunned for a moment, looked at Sulayun, saw the smile in his sister's eyes, and reacted. It was really Sulayun who did it. "Mom, do you want to try it?" Sulayun smiled and served Sun Jiaro some food. In terms of appearance alone, it certainly wouldn't taste bad, not to mention that it was made by her daughter herself. Even if it didn't taste good, Sun Jiaro would say it was delicious, but she gave up the idea after she took the bite. It tastes great. As long as mom likes it. The mother and daughter smiled at each other, then went to see Suyet. They were already engrossed in eating and didn't even bother to talk. Sulayun said helplessly, "Brother, you eat slowly, no one will compete with you." Suya nodded repeatedly but didn't stop talking. "Until I am full." The cooked black-bone chicken soup was also brought up. Sulayun poured a bowl of soup for Sun Jiaro and Suya, "Drink some chicken soup to eliminate food and warm the stomach." After dinner, the mother and son chatted for a while, and then they dispersed. As soon as Sun Jiaro and Nanny Li arrived at Huayro Pavilion, they saw a little maid coming to greet them and saying in a low voice, "Madam, the Marquis is here." "New." Sun Jiaro's mouth corners dropped slightly, she looked at Granny Li and entered the room. Su Changqing sat in his seat with an impatient look on his face. But when he saw Sun Jiaro, his expression quickly changed. "Isn't the Marquis busy with the Yamen affairs? Why are you here?" Sun Jiaro sat down beside her and ignored Su Changqing's extended hand. The latter twitched his eyes in embarrassment and retracted his hand. "Madam, we are almost done with the Yamen affairs." Su Changqing put her fist to her mouth and coughed lightly. "I also know that I have neglected Madam for many days, so I am here to apologize. The Marquis has killed me. You are busy with the Yamen affairs for the sake of the prosperous dynasty. How can I blame the Marquis?" Having been together for 20 years, Sun Jiaro could not tell what Su Changqing meant. She lowered her eyes to cover up the coldness in her eyes and said, "Master Ho, what do you want to tell me?" "Yes, look at my memory." Su Changqing moved as he spoke, feeling a little unsteady in his seat. It seems that what she wants to say is difficult to say. The coldness in Sun Jiaro's eyes became more and more intense. "If you have anything to do with me, Lord Marquis, just tell me." "That's right." Su Changqing frowned. "You also know that Lu Hong's cousin is pregnant. There is no ground dragon in the yard where she lives now. It would be bad if the child gets cold." "What does Mr. Ho mean?" Sun Jiaro received it. "Look at whether we're going to find someone to install the Earth Dragon in the next few days." That's what the Marquis said. "In fact, I also told my mother-in-law about this matter, but my mother-in-law said that she would be able to pick her up after my brother-in-law's yard was tidied up, so she told me not to worry about it." Su Changqing frowned. "Did mother really say that? How dare I say nonsense about my mother-in-law?" Sun Jiaro's tone was calm, without any ups and downs. "In that case, forget it." Su Changqing twitched the corners of his lips and stood up. "Madam, please rest early, I still have some things to be busy with." Sun Jiaro only nodded and did not get up to see her off as usual. But now Su Changqing, who only cares about Wen Yao and the child in her belly, didn't notice at all and left Huayro Pavilion on her own. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 127. Chapter 127. It's not a free gift. Grandma Li looked at Sun Jiaro's face and hesitated whether to comfort her. "Mommy, you don't have to worry about me." Sun Jiaro looked away, without any emotion on her face. She has long lost her expectations for Su Changqing. Father has contacted the old department, but Ye is about to go on an expedition, so he can't come in a hurry. Old slave understands. Seeing Sun Jiaro's change, Grandma Li felt a little distressed. But she also knows that long-term pain is worse than short-term pain, and it is not a bad thing. The day of departure. Outskirts of the capital. The only people from the Su family who came to see him off were Sulayun and Sun Jiaro. Yunur, after I leave, you have to take good care of your mother and yourself. Brother, you have said it several times, Sulayun said impatiently, but his face was full of reluctance. Mom has asked for the amulet for you, as well as my breast shield. Be sure to wear it. Suya patted his chest and said, don't worry, I have them all with me. I will never take them off. Sun Changping, the eldest uncle on the side, took a step forward and said, you have gone to the northwest. Remember to ask your second uncle to write more letters and come back. If it doesn't work, ask your second aunt to come back. Zioxwin's child is also 5 years old, so he will stay in the northwest, it's nothing. As he spoke, Sun Changping took out a letter from his arms and said, this is a letter written by your grandfather to your second uncle. Remember to take it with you. I know, uncle. The trumpet sounds, and the soldiers are about to set off. Mom, Yunur, uncle, I'm leaving. Suya said goodbye and got on the horse. Not far away, Xiao Shenjiao also said goodbye to Princess Anil and others, and was walking towards the horses. His Royal Highness the King of Jin. Sulayun stopped him. Unexpectedly, Sulayun would come to find him. Xiao Shenjiao paused slightly and turned to look at Sulayun. Miss Su, don't worry, I won't let anything happen to your brother. Your Highness, there will be no trouble when marching and fighting. The civilian women are not here to ask for your help. Sulayun took out a jade pendant from his sleeve. I think this jade pendant should be returned to its original owner. Xiao Shenjiao frowned slightly and stared at the jade pendant in Sulayun's hand. Miss Su, do you want to use this jade pendant? Your Highness has misunderstood. Your Highness has saved civilian girls several times, and his kindness has been reciprocated. This jade pendant should have been returned to your Highness long ago. If Miss Su doesn't mind, just keep it for me. Xiao Shenjiao pulled the reins, got on the horse, lowered his head and looked into Sulayun's eyes. When I come back, I will go to Miss Su to get the jade pendant back. Sulayun was startled and did not speak for a moment. The earth is rarely warm in winter. Looking at the soldiers retreating, Sulayun slowly put away the jade pendant. Yunur, it's time to go back. Sun Gro said later. Sulayun turned around and looked at her mother. Mom, you go back first, Yunur still has some things to do. Then please pay more attention. Sun Gro looked at Lian Xian and Quilau. Remember to take good care of the young lady. Yes, ma'am. The three of them entered the city and went to a restaurant. Sulayun asked for a private room with a window near the street, ordered some tea and pastries, and sat down. You guys should sit down too, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. Quilau and Lian Xian looked at each other, wondering about Sulayun's behavior. Miss, it's fine if I just stand. There will be a good show to watch soon, and you will have a chance to stand. Seeing this, Quilau and Liang Xin did not dare to refuse any more, so they took a small stool and sat down. After a while, there was a knock on the private room door. Sun Wen entered the house. Miss, everything has been arranged. New. Sulayun smiled, stood up and walked to the window. Quilau and Liang Xin quickly got up and followed them to the edge. There were people coming and going on the street, but it was just like usual, there was nothing different. But soon, a noise came. When will you pay back the money I owed you before? You are playing tricks, how could I lose everything? You can't afford to lose. If you can't afford to lose, don't gamble. Brothers, teach me a lesson. The figures intertwined, and Lian Xian's eyes suddenly widened. Miss, isn't that Su Changzhong? Looking carefully, the man who was pinned to the ground and beaten by several gangsters was Su Changzhong. Sulayun was not too surprised. He seemed to have known who it was for a long time. Boy, is it just this little money? The gangster led by him snatched Su Changzhong's money bag, shook it in his hand, and a few small pieces of silver fell out. It's you who are cheating. You kid, Don't talk nonsense. The black and white writing on the paper is clearly written. You, a scholar, can't understand it, right? When the people around heard this, they couldn't help but start talking. You're still a scholar, you even come to gamble. You know people well but don't know their hearts, you dare to do gambling and harmful things. What a disgrace to us scholars. I'm not, don't talk nonsense. Suchong eyes widened. He would dress up every time he came to gamble. How did this person know his identity? The gangster leader snorted coldly, if you don't know what to do except yourself, how do you think brother who got around in this place? Let me tell you, you owe me 1,000 taels, and I will only give you 3 days. If you can't see the money, don't blame me for going to the academy to expose your scandal. No, don't, I will pay it back, I will pay it back. Brothers, let's go. The crowd gradually dispersed, and Suchong stood up in embarrassment, still limping a little. He was about to leave when a dark shadow fell in front of him. He looked up and saw a man standing in front of him. Mr. Su, my lady wants to see you. Suchong followed Sun Wen into the private room. Suleun and the others were sitting behind the screen, looking out of nowhere. I wonder who the lady is. Suchong squinted his eyes and looked at the screen, trying to figure out who was behind it. I can help you pay back the money you owe. What? Suchong didn't expect the other party to say that. He slapped his hands on the table and knocked over the teacup. We don't know each other, why do you want to help me? Suchong stared at the screen, thinking about what she was going to do. It's precisely because we don't know each other that I asked you to help. 1,000 taels is not a small amount, and I have conditions. What are your conditions? Don't worry, it's not difficult. I heard you live in Su Mansion now. Yes. Suchong knew that the other party knew his identity, but he knew nothing about this person and couldn't help but feel uneasy. Suleun coughed lightly, and Sun Wen took out a banknote from his arms and placed it in front of Suchong. Here is 100 taels, take it as my sincerity. My conditions are not difficult, but I need the help of you two brothers and sisters. Can you really help me pay back the 1,000 taels? Nature. I see. As soon as the banknote was taken out, Suchong couldn't take his eyes away. After thinking for a moment, he immediately took the banknote and turned around and went out. Miss, your voice changed so drastically just now. If I hadn't seen you speaking, I wouldn't have been able to tell. Quilai was amazed. Lian Xin, on the other hand, looked confused. Miss, why do you give them money for nothing? Of course this money is not given away for free. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 128. Chapter 128. Come and pay back the money. With 100 taels in his arms, Suchong did not dare to stay at all and ran all the way back to the Su mansion. When we entered the small courtyard, we quickly took a breath. Brother, you go again. Su Yuking saw Suchong's embarrassed expression and quickly pulled him into the house. Are you gambling again? Just for today. Suchong rolled his eyes, obviously lying. Su Yuking saw through it at a glance. Brother, didn't mother tell you to stop gambling? I used to live outside and dad didn't come here often, but now what if dad finds you out? I know. What are you talking nonsense about? Suchong said in a rough voice, pushing Su Yuking away. He didn't look like a scholar in the past, but more like a street gangster. Look. He took out the 100 tael silver note from his arms, handed it to Su Yuking, and shook it. Su Yuking's eyes lit up. Brother, where did you get all this money? Did you win gambling? You must know that the brother and sister can only get 5 taels of pocket money from Wenyayu every month, and they have never seen so much money at once. This, a rich lady gave it to me. A rich lady. Su Yuking suddenly sneered and looked Su Chongzhong up and down. Brother, don't tell me that a young lady likes you like this. I still look down on those ladies from the public. I, Su Chongzhong, will marry a princess in the future. Su Chongzhong certainly knew that the other party didn't mean it this way, but he felt very unhappy hearing Su Yuking's tone. He is a talented person and the son of Su Ho. There will definitely be many people coming to ask for marriage in the future. Then I said I wanted to marry the prince. Su Yuking also followed, and then her face turned gloomy. I don't know when Dad will tell us our identities. This matter cannot be rushed. Su Chongzhong came to Su Yuking's side. I have something to trouble you with. What? I didn't get this money for free. Li Mansion. Mrs. Li is entertaining some friends. I heard that your boy and the eldest lady of the Su family are going to have a wedding soon? But I see why there is no movement in the Li family. Mrs. Li frowned and said, where did you hear that? It has been spread all over the streets and alleys that Su Weiner and your grandson always walk hand in hand on the street. It's like this. Why don't you want to get married? No, I've heard about it too. You said that these two children have been engaged for many years anyway, so it would be a good idea to marry them back as soon as possible. This way, someone can share the burden for you. Mrs. Li's face didn't look good after the previous sentence, but when she heard the latter sentence, she relaxed slightly. Rui's marriage is not in a hurry. It has been decided. Now we have to wait for spring. That's true. If you come back with a top score in the examination, you will be even happier. We old sisters will congratulate you first. I haven't even written out the 8 characters yet. Mrs. Li was talking, but her eyes were full of smiles. Obviously, the words spoken by the few people in front of her touched her heart. After seeing off a few people, Mrs. Li lowered her face and called out to Mammy, go and find out what's going on with Ruier and Su Weiner. Isn't it shameful enough for them to be hooking up with each other before they are married? Yes. Mammy was called to leave when she was about to leave. Also, go and get Ruier. Mammy responded and then left the yard. Within a moment, Li Rui hurried over. Grandma called my grandson to come over. What's the matter? Li Rui arrived respectfully. Mrs. Li looked at Li Rui and said slowly, what have you been doing these days? Going back to my grandma. My grandson is still studying strategy. A new master came to the academy a few days ago and he is very successful in this area. My grandson is studying with him. Really? That's good. Mrs. Li picked up the teacup and took a sip. There's not much time until spring. You can go out less these days and let your servants buy it if you need it. Li Rui was a little puzzled. Grandma, your grandson always has to go out to socialize, right? I didn't say I wouldn't let you go, but the most important thing now is spring. You should put aside some personal matters between children and children. Mrs. Li shook her head helplessly. Her grandson was good at everything, but his ears were soft. He had the same virtues as his father and was controlled by a woman. Li Rui understood something now. Grandma, are you talking about Wan'er? She will not affect her grandson's study, not to mention Wan'er's talent and learning. You also know it? Ruier, are you too old now to listen to your grandmother's words? The grandson doesn't dare, but the grandson listens to his grandmother. Mrs. Li nodded with satisfaction. That's good, let's go back to study. Yes. Li Rui bit his lip and left Mrs. Li's yard. The nanny who was waiting beside Mrs. Li said, Old madam, would you like to remind the servants around the young master to pay more attention? That's not necessary. Mrs. Li pursed her lips. Ruier is young after all. If she is under a lot of pressure, I'm afraid it will be more difficult to discipline her. Grandma nodded understandingly. After all, this kind of thing has happened before. Gambling house. Su Chongzhong straightened his chest and walked into the workshop. Yo, you guys still dare to come? Seeing Su Chongzhong, several gambling thugs came over and surrounded him. Suchongzhon calmly took out a few banknotes from his arms and said, "I'm here to pay back the money." The thugs looked at each other in surprise. Did this guy really have 1,000 taels? Pay back the money, come with us. Leading people into the backyard, Brother who had previously led people to beat up Suchongzhon, was sitting on a lounge chair, leisurely drinking a small drink, and there was a girl beside him who was beating his legs. This scene of enjoyment came into Suchongzhong's eyes, making waves in his eyes. How can such a common person live such a good life? Come to pay back the money. Brother who took a sip of wine and looked at Suchongzhon. After a moment, he stood up and walked to him. Where's the money? Smelling the smell of alcohol on Brother Hu's body, Suchongzhon couldn't help but take a step back and fumbled with his sleeves. Here, here. Seeing stacks of banknotes being taken out, everyone's eyes lit up. That's a whole 1,000 taels. Why are they all banknotes? Brother Hu muttered with some dissatisfaction. I have to go to the bank to change it, and I haven't collected the money yet. The men quickly stepped forward to sort out the banknotes. Seeing the 1,000 taels being taken away, Suchongzhong's lips became stiff and he said, Brother Hu, what about my business? Don't worry, Brother Hu will keep his word. If you don't owe money, no one will know your identity. Brother Hu's eyes flashed and he glanced at Suchongzhong. I think you are quite cheerful, so be it, go and set up a table, and all your gambling money today will be put into my account. Suchongzhong was overjoyed and said, Thank you, Brother Hu. After saying that, he couldn't wait to return to the gambling house. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 129. Chapter 129 Preparing Birthday Gifts. Boss, what should I do with these banknotes? The subordinate brought the banknote to Brother Hu with a greedy look on his face. Brother Hu glanced at a few of his men and said, Put this money in my room. I'll pay for the brothers' drinks tonight. Thank you, boss. The subordinates who were still a little dissatisfied showed joy and hurriedly put the banknotes into Brother Hu's house. After the men left, Brother Hu waved away the waiting girl, You go down first. The girl did not dare to say anything and left with her head lowered. There was no one in the backyard, but Brother Hu still looked wary and entered his house. As soon as I closed the door, a gust of cool wind blew behind me. Brother Hu swallowed his saliva, turned around cautiously, and met a pair of cool eyes. This big brother, that money. Keep this money for yourself. You know what to do next. I won't come again. I know. Brother Hu touched his hands and looked up again. There was no one in the room. He touched his head and murmured in his heart, I don't know who Suchongzhong offended, but this guy can take out 1,000 taels in 3 days, so he seems to be quite rich. Shang Shu of the Ministry of Rites, Lin Mansion. Sulayun followed Mrs. Lin to the specially prepared embroidery room. It is said to be an embroidery room, but the decoration inside is extremely noble. Mrs. Lin. The people in the embroidery room saw Mrs. Lin, stood up and said hello, and their eyes fell on Sulayun. The people in this embroidery room are not ordinary embroidery ladies. There are many ladies among them, as well as embroidery ladies who have been praised by the Queen Mother for their excellent embroidery skills. You don't have to be so polite, please sit down. Mrs. Lin did not put on airs when facing everyone. She was busy with the Queen Mother's birthday banquet, so she would not offend anyone among them. Let me introduce to you, this is Sulayun, the second daughter of the Suhao family. Is this the one who came back from Jingzhou? A woman dressed completely different from the others asked loudly. Mrs. Lin first glanced at Sulayun beside her, worried that her words would make him angry, but Sulayun's expression did not waver at all. She then looked at the speaker, who was the embroiderer who had been praised by the Queen Mother. Among these people, this person is the most difficult to deal with. I am indeed back from Jingzhou. Faced with such a problem, Sulayun couldn't help but feel uneasy. Growing up in Jingzhou was not what she wanted, and it was also a problem she couldn't avoid. Since she couldn't avoid it, why not face it directly and calmly? Lu Qin raised his eyebrows and looked at Sulayun, with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. She thought she would be the kind of girl who couldn't bear the grievance. Mrs. Lin, I don't know why I want to invite Miss Su here. Lu Qin asked. She thought it would be a verbal battle, but to Mrs. Lin's surprise, Lu Qin did not continue to ask. Seeing this, Mrs. Lin also breathed a sigh of relief. Miss Su is quite knowledgeable in double-sided embroidery. I asked her to help. Double-sided embroidery, Lu Qin felt a little suspicious and absurd. Ms. Su learned double-sided embroidery when she was in Jingzhou. They all say that she was raised in the countryside, so it would make sense if she knew how to do some embroidery, but double-sided embroidery is something that ordinary women cannot afford to learn. Mrs. Lin glanced at the maid, who brought up Sulayun's previous embroidery. These are made by Miss Su, you can take a look. Several people came forward to look at the embroidery, showing expressions of surprise from time to time. Lu Qin looked at their reactions and took a step forward. Took an embroidery and looked at it. After a moment, the expression on his face changed. Is this embroidered by Miss Su? Lu Qin held the embroidered handkerchief in his hand and looked at Sulayun. Sulayun nodded. If there are any shortcomings, please give me your advice. I don't dare to give advice. Lu Qin put down her embroidery handkerchief. She had practiced double-sided embroidery for many years to achieve her current strength, but she never expected that a young lady who came back from the countryside would be even better than her. I feel a little helpless in my heart. But Lu Qin is not the kind of person who will be timid or angry when others are better than her. In her opinion, if someone is better than her, then she should continue practicing and surpass that person. Miss Lu Qin, let's discuss the method of double-sided embroidery among the three of us. Mrs. Lin said. Lu Qin and Sulayun nodded, followed Mrs. Lin into another room. Although the embroidery pattern has been finalized, the materials and stitches need to be carefully considered, otherwise even one stitch error may ruin the entire embroidery. When it comes to embroidery skills, Lu Qin and Mrs. Lin are both Sulayun seniors, so Sulayun occasionally makes a sound from the side, but most of the time he just listens. Using threads, I think I can add some gold and silver threads, which will make the picture look more majestic. Lu Qin expressed her thoughts, and Mrs. Lin nodded in agreement. Sulayun frowned and said, Mrs. Lin, Miss Lu, I think it would be better to use silk thread instead of gold and silver thread. What did Miss Su say? Mrs. Lin didn't think what Sulayun said was wrong, but she was just a little curious. Lu Qin also looked at Sulayun, waiting for her answer. Although gold and silver thread can increase the sense of the embroidery surface and make it look more elegant, the shortcomings of gold and silver thread are also obvious. It is easy to break. If it is not taken care of well, it will easily destroy the entire embroidery surface. Sulayun didn't feel timid at all when looking at the two people, but silk thread won't. Miss Su, don't forget that the patterns sewn with silk thread are extremely thin. If you offer something like this to the Queen Mother, she won't buy it. Lu Qin did not mean to be sarcastic when she said this, but she was very aware of the Queen Mother's preferences and knew all kinds of silk threads well. Sulayun knew her worries. Miss Lu, I have a way to solve this problem. Any solution? Lu Qin slowly withdrew his gaze, but the shock in his heart did not diminish at all. Not only do we need to improve silk thread, we also need to improve double-sided embroidery. Did Miss Su really only learn embroidery for 2 months? What do you think, Miss Lu? Sulayun looked at Lu Qin with a smile, waiting for her response. Then do as you say, but just in case, we still need to use gold and silver thread first. Nature. Looking at how Sulayun and Luchin got along, Mrs. Lin breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Luchin didn't have any objections to Sulayun, they would be able to work together well. Sulayun and Luchin discussed again, and the sky was getting dark. Mrs. Lin, please send her here. At the door of Lin Mansion, Sulayun said goodbye to Mrs. Lin. He looked up and saw Luchin, who was also walking out of Lin Mansion. There was no maid around Luchin, she seemed to be alone. Sulayun looked around and saw that there was nothing else except Su Mansion's carriage. Miss Lu, can I give you a ride? Miss Su, just do what you want. Luchin rejected Sulayun's kindness and walked straight in one direction. Mrs. Lin saw the scene and advised, Miss Su, don't mind, Luchin has always been like this. Fine. Sulayun smiled and shook his head, then glanced at Luchin's leaving figure before getting on the carriage. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 130. Chapter 130 A Bad Stomach. Kaya Waziazu. Sulayun entered the house, and Sun Wen was already waiting inside. Miss, everything is done. Sun Wen was as concise as ever, and closed his mouth after speaking. Lian Xian took off Sulayun's coat, dusted off the snowflakes, and hung it up. Is there any movement over there, Suwaner? Sulayun asked after taking a sip of hot tea to warm up his body. There seems to be something wrong with Suwaner's wet nurse. How to say? Sulayun raised his eyebrows, a little curious. In her impression, Suwaner, the nanny, was quite law-abiding and silent. She spent most of her time in the peony garden. She left the house early this morning. My subordinate asked someone to follow her, but she lost her. Lost. Sulayun frowned, worried that he might alert the enemy. Don't worry, miss, I haven't found anything wrong yet. Check the identity of this person carefully. Yes. Sun Wen left Kaya Waziazu. Sulayun looked at Lian Xian and Kui Lu and said, in the past few days, you should ask more of the servants in the house about the situation of wet nurse Suwaner. Don't be discovered. This slave knows. After dinner, Sulayun went to the study room and stayed there until midnight. Lian Xian yawned and was about to knock on the door to urge her to take a rest, when the door opened. Miss, it's almost time to get ugly. It's time for you to rest. Sulayun handed the 2 medicine bottles in his hand to Lian Xian. You can send these 2 medicine bottles to the Sun Mansion for my grandfather tomorrow. It turns out that the lady is making medicine for General Sun. Lian Xian put the medicine bottle away, followed Sulayun back to the room, and changed her clothes. Sulayun was already lying on the bed and fell asleep before she could finish packing. Lian Xian covered Sulayun with a quilt and slept outside. The next day, after school, Sulayun asked Kualayu to take the book box back, and he walked to the gate of Su Mansion. Sister Yunur. Suwaner's voice came from behind. Sulayun stopped and looked at Suwaner. What's the matter? Facing Sulayun's cold face, Suwaner was not displeased at all. She still put on a smile and said, there are new pastries in Jade House. If my sister has nothing to do, why don't we go and try them together? I have something to do, so I won't go. Sulayun put down her words, ignored Suwaner's reaction, and left. Suwaner stood there for a while, the smile on her face gradually faded, and after a while, she turned around and left. Even though he really didn't want to go, Sulayun wasn't making excuses. She has to rush to the Lin Mansion to attend to the Queen Mother's birthday. For several days, Sulayun went to Lin Mansion after leaving school, without giving Suwaner the slightest chance. Miss, I heard that the second young lady goes back to the Lin Mansion every day and stays there all day long. Yu Yao came close to Suwaner and whispered. Suwaner frowned slightly. Have you found out what she did? I haven't heard about it yet. Then don't ask around. Su Wainer looked at Yuyao coldly, who trembled and lowered her head. Yes, miss. Miss. An old woman came in from outside the house. Seeing her, Yuyao hurriedly ran out of the house and closed the door. Su Wainer sat up from her seat and walked to the old woman. Grandma Lan, did you find something? Grandma Lan carefully took out a medicine bottle wrapped in a handkerchief from her arms. This is for 2 people. Miss, you must be careful when using it. I will naturally be careful. Taking the medicine bottle, Su Wainer showed a smile on her face, with a bit of penetrating gloom. At night, Suleun returned to the courtyard. Sun Wen emerged from the corner as usual. Miss, this is the medicinal powder we found in Grandma Ian's house. It is a drug called magic powder, which can cause hallucinations and also has the effect of an aphrodisiac. It seems that those medicines that Su Wainer had before were made by Granny Lan for her. Suleun took the powder and sniffed it at the tip of his nose. Waited for a while, no response. This should be taken orally. Suleun sprinkled the powder into the water, and it quickly dissolved, becoming colorless and odorless. Looking at the water in the cup, Suleun was thoughtful. What does Su Wainer need this medicine for? But soon, the answer came. For every 7 days of school, there will be 2 days off. Early in the morning, after Suleun said hello to the old lady, he went to Lin Mansion. Who would have thought that Su Wainer would invite the old lady to the Jade Building in front of her? Sister Yunur, you won't give me this face, right? Girl Yun, it's normal for you sisters to go out to play, don't always be alone. The old lady also followed suit. Suleun chuckled, since Sister Waner kindly invites you, then I'll go. She asked Lian Xian to go to Lin Mansion to report, and then followed Su Wainer out of the house. Arrived at Jade Building. There are already several people sitting in the private room. Sister Waner, you are finally here. Li Minmin was originally sitting next to her brother Li Rui. When she saw Su Waner, she immediately came up to her and dragged her to Li Rui's side. Su Waner grabbed Li Minmin without leaving a trace. Minmin, there is your sister Yunur as well. Sister, please sit over here. Seeing where Su Waner was pointing, Suleun raised his eyebrows slightly. Let her sit between Su Waner and Li Rui, she really knows how to choose the position. Suleun ignored it and directly found an empty seat to sit down. Sister, I'll just sit here, I don't dare to disturb you and Mr. Li. Suleun had a teasing look on her face, which made Li Minmin feel that she was very knowledgeable. Li Minmin pulled Su Waner to sit down. Yes, Sister Waner, you can sit here. In front of Li Rui and Li Minmin, how could Su Waner refuse directly? She could only be pulled to sit down by Li Minmin. But when she sat down and took a look, Li Rui's eyes fell on Suleun beside her. Su Waner's palms tightened and she whispered, Brother Rui. Sister Waner. Li Rui seemed to have come to his senses, and quickly looked at Su Waner, with tenderness in his eyes. But such a change in mood only frightened Su Waner. She was even a little hesitant about whether to do that today. If Li Rui really fell in love with Suleun, wouldn't she be working as a matchmaker now? Suleun really came to taste the pastries and didn't speak much. Suddenly, Su Waner held her stomach and turned a little pale. Sister Waner, what's wrong with you? Li Minmin noticed her expression at a glance. Su Waner seemed to be enduring the pain, and said with a wry smile, It's okay, maybe I have a bad stomach. I'm going to see the doctor. Li Rui reacted quickly, stood up, and said. He was pulled back by Su Waner again. Brother Rui, is not that kind of. Su Waner seemed a little embarrassed and looked at Li Minmin. Minmin, can you accompany me to the toilet? Su Waner said the last 2 words very softly, but Li Minmin was right next to her, so she heard them clearly. Well, Sister Waner, I'll go with you. End of this chapter.